For 300 years, humanity had worn a mask. When the first human ships entered the territory of the Galactic Assembly in the year 2247, they came with open hands and friendly smiles. The aliens who ruled this part of space had seen many species rise and fall over millions of years. They had fought wars that burned entire star systems. They had built empires that stretched across thousands of worlds. And now, they watched with mild curiosity as these strange creatures from a small blue planet joined their ranks. The Galactic Assembly was made up of dozens of different species. The Vethkai were tall insect-like beings with 4 arms and compound eyes that could see in every direction at once. They controlled most of the trade routes and considered themselves the masters of commerce. The Sirani were beautiful crystalline creatures whose bodies glowed with inner light. They were peaceful and kind, but weak, and other species often took advantage of them. The Draxan were massive reptilian warriors with scales like armor and teeth like knives. They respected only strength and viewed kindness as a sign of weakness. Admiral Samuel Grant stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel, Horizon's Edge. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in the Terran Navy for 40 years, and he had seen things that would give most people nightmares. But right now, his job was to smile and shake hands with aliens who looked down on his entire species. His aide, Commander Lisa Wong, walked up to him with a data tablet in her hands. She was younger than him, with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She had been his second-in-command for 5 years now, and she knew him better than almost anyone. "The Vethkai ambassador is requesting another delay on the trade negotiations," she said. "They want to change the terms of the mineral rights agreement again." Samuel sighed deeply. This was the 3rd time this month. The Vethkai knew that humans needed those minerals for their colonies. They also knew that humans would never push back, never threaten, never do anything except accept whatever terms were offered. "Tell them we agreed to the delay," Samuel said, "and send our thanks for their patience." Lisa nodded, but he could see the frustration in her eyes. She was young enough to still feel angry about how the galaxy treated them. Samuel had learned long ago to hide that anger deep inside where no one could see it, back on Earth in the city that was once called Washington. Secretary General Marcus Webb addressed the United Terran Council. The council chamber was a massive room with seats arranged in a circle. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing maps of the galaxy and reports from human colonies scattered across hundreds of star systems. Marcus was a large man with dark skin and a voice that could fill any room. He had been Secretary General for 12 years, longer than anyone before him. He had negotiated with aliens, managed crises, and kept humanity safe through countless dangerous situations. But today, his face was grim. "The Draxan Imperium has expanded into the neutral zone again," he announced. "They have claimed 3 more star systems that were promised to the Sirani refugees. The neutral zone was supposed to be safe territory where no species could claim ownership. The Sirani had fled there after the Draxan attacked their original homeworld 50 years ago. They had built new colonies and tried to rebuild their civilization. Now the Draxan were coming for them again." Councilwoman Patricia Vance leaned forward in her seat. She was an older woman, with white hair and eyes like steel. She had been on the council for 30 years and had seen this pattern repeat itself over and over. "What is the Assembly's response?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "The usual. They have issued formal protests. They have announced economic sanctions that everyone knows will never be enforced. The Draxan know that no one will stop them." "And what do the Draxan say about us?" asked Councilman Daniel Torres. He was the oldest member of the council, over 90 years old, but still sharp as a knife. "They say that humans are cowards," Marcus replied. "They say that we hide behind diplomacy because we are too weak to fight. They say that one day, when they are finished with the Sirani, they will come for us as well." Silence fell over the chamber. Every person in that room knew the truth that the galaxy did not know. They knew about the hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, where warships 10 times more powerful than anything the Assembly had ever seen were waiting. They knew about the weapons platforms hidden on 1,000 moons, capable of destroying entire fleets in seconds. They knew about the soldiers who trained every day for a war that might never come. Humanity had learned its lesson long ago. Before they reached the stars, they had nearly destroyed themselves. Wars had burned across their planet, killing billions. Weapons had been created that could end all life on Earth in a matter of hours. They had stood at the edge of extinction and looked into the abyss, and then they had stepped back. They had united. They had rebuilt. They had reached for the stars with a promise in their hearts. Never again would they be the aggressors. Never again would they start a war. They would be peaceful. They would be kind. They would show the galaxy that humanity had evolved beyond violence. But they had also made another promise, a secret one that only the highest leaders knew. They would never again be victims. If someone attacked them, if someone murdered their people, if someone forced their hand, then they would show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. "We continue as planned," Daniel Torres said quietly. "We maintain the mask. We wait." Patricia looked at him with tired eyes. "How much longer, Daniel? How many more insults must we endure? How many more times must we watch innocent people die while we do nothing?" Daniel met her gaze steadily. "Until we have no other choice. Until the mask serves no purpose. Until they force our hand." He looked around the chamber at the faces of his fellow council members. They were all thinking the same thing. They were all wondering when that day would come. "We are not cowards," Daniel continued. "We are patient. There is a difference. A coward runs from a fight because he is afraid. We walk away from fights because we know what happens when we do not. The galaxy thinks we are weak because they have never seen us fight. Let them think that. Let them believe we are harmless. Because when the day comes that we can no longer afford to be harmless, they will learn the truth." He stood up slowly, his old bones creaking with the effort. "I have lived for 93 years. I have seen humanity at its worst and at its best. I have seen us nearly destroy ourselves, and I have seen us rebuild from the ashes. I know what we are capable of, both good and evil." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And I pray every day that the galaxy never has to learn that truth. Because on that day, everything will change, and there will be no going back." The council members sat in heavy silence. Outside the windows, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. It was beautiful and peaceful. But somewhere in the darkness between the stars, events were already in motion that would shatter that peace forever. The mask that humanity had worn for 300 years was about to crack. And when it did, the galaxy would finally see what had been hiding underneath all along. The colony world of Nu. Providence was a beautiful place. It orbited a yellow star, much like Earth's sun, and its surface was covered with green forests, blue oceans, and golden fields of grain. 12 million humans called it home. 3 million Serani refugees had also settled there, welcomed by humans who remembered what it felt like to be homeless and afraid. The capital city. Haven was built along the shores of a great lake. Tall buildings rose toward the sky, their windows catching the morning light. Children played in parks while their parents worked in offices and factories. The orbital university floated above the atmosphere, accepting students from across the galaxy who wanted to learn alongside humans and Serani alike. It was a peaceful world, a hopeful world, a world that believed the future would be better than the past. Captain Nathan Cole commanded the defense frigate Steadfast. He was a quiet man with brown hair and kind eyes. He had joined the Navy because he wanted to protect people, not because he wanted to fight. For 10 years, he had patrolled the space around New Providence. In all that time, he had never fired a shot in anger. His daughter Emma was 19 years old. She was studying medicine at the orbital university because she wanted to help people just like her father did. Nathan called her every week, and every week she told him about her classes, her friends, and her dreams for the future. She wanted to become a doctor and work on colony worlds where medical care was scarce. She wanted to make a difference. The distress call came at 0347 hours on a night. Like any other, Nathan was sleeping in his quarters when the alarm dragged him awake. He was on the bridge within 2 minutes. Still pulling on his uniform jacket as he ran through the corridors. "Report," he demanded as he stepped onto the bridge. Lieutenant Amy Santos looked up from her console with fear in her eyes. She was young, barely 25, and she had never seen combat. None of them had. Sir, we received a distress call from New Providence Emergency Services. It started broadcasting 3 minutes ago, then cut off suddenly. I have been trying to re-establish contact, but there is no response. Nathan felt cold dread settling in his stomach. Play the recording. The speakers crackled to life. A woman's voice, shaking with terror, filled the bridge. This is New Providence Emergency Broadcast. Unknown fleet has entered orbit. They are not responding to our communications. Oh God, they are firing on the surface. Repeat, unknown vessels are attacking civilian targets. We need immediate assistance. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need. The transmission ended in static. Get me a long-range scan, Nathan ordered. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. Amy worked her console with trembling fingers. The results appeared on the main view screen, and Nathan felt his heart stop. I am reading 217 ships, Amy whispered. All of them are showing Draxan military signatures. They have established a blockade around the planet. Nothing is getting in or out. 217 ships. Nathan had 16 frigates under his command. 16 small patrol vessels designed for peacekeeping duties, not combat. They were outgunned, outmatched, and completely unprepared for what was happening. Sir, we are receiving a broadcast from the Draxan fleet. The view screen flickered, and the face of a Draxan warlord appeared. His scales were the deep crimson of the warrior caste. His eyes were yellow and cold, like a snake watching a mouse. When he spoke, his voice was filled with contempt. I am Fleet Commander Krathver of the Draxan Imperium. The world you call New Providence is now under our protection. All human vessels will surrender immediately. If you resist, you will be destroyed. If you attempt to flee, you will be destroyed. If you attempt to send any communication beyond this system, you will be destroyed. The image changed to show the surface of New Providence. Nathan watched in horror as cities burned. Orbital strikes had carved trenches of fire across entire continents. The capital city of Haven was nothing but smoking ruins. Bodies littered the streets, human and Serani alike, men, women, and children, cut down without mercy. This is what happens to those who are weak, Krathver continued. This is what happens to those who believe that kindness will protect them. Your species has hidden behind diplomacy for 300 years. You have pretended to be peaceful because you are afraid to fight. Today we show the galaxy what humans truly are. Pray. The transmission ended. Nathan stood frozen at the center of the bridge. Around him, his crew was crying, screaming, or staring in shock at the empty view screen. 12 million humans. 3 million Serani, murdered in a single night because the Draxan wanted to prove a point. His daughter was down there. His Emma, who wanted to be a doctor, who wanted to help people, who had called him just 3 days ago to tell him about a boy she had met at the university. She was down there in that burning hell, and he could do nothing to save her. Sir, Amy said through her tears. What do we do? Nathan knew what the regulations said. Fall back, regroup, send a report to the Admiralty, and wait for instructions. File a formal complaint with the Galactic Assembly. Except that millions of people had died and there was nothing he could do about it. He had followed those regulations his entire career. He had believed in the system. He had trusted that if humanity remained peaceful, if they showed the galaxy they meant no harm, they would be treated with respect in return. He had been a fool. Open a channel to Earth, Nathan said. His voice was calm now, cold as ice. Priority 1 transmission. Authorization code. Prometheus Rising. Amy stared at him. Every officer in the Terran Navy knew that code. It was taught in the academy, whispered about in officer clubs, and prayed to never be used. It was the code that would wake the sleeping giant. The code that would drop the mask, sir? Are you sure? Nathan turned to look at her. His kind eyes were gone now, replaced by something harder and older and more dangerous. They murdered 15 million people, Lieutenant. They burned cities full of children. They killed my daughter. turned back to the view screen, where the distant lights of the Draxon fleet glittered like cold stars. The mask comes off. Send the code. Amy took a deep breath and pressed the transmission button. Across the vast emptiness of space, a signal raced toward Earth at faster than light speed. It carried only 2 words. But those 2 words would change the galaxy forever. Prometheus Rising. The time for patience was over. The time for diplomacy had passed. The time for humanity to show the galaxy what it truly was had finally arrived. And God help anyone who stood in their way. The message reached Earth in 4 hours. It passed through 7 relay stations, each one adding its own verification code to confirm that this was real, that this was not a drill, that the worst had finally happened. Secretary General Marcus Webb was pulled from his bed at midnight. By the time he reached the council chamber, every member of the United Terran Council was already there. Their faces were pale. Some had been crying. All of them had seen the footage from New Providence that had come with the transmission. The holographic display showed the destruction in terrible detail. Cities reduced to ash, mass graves being dug by Draxon soldiers, survivors being rounded up and marched into holding camps. The orbital university, where thousands of young people had been studying for their futures, was now a field of floating debris. Marcus stood before the council with the weight of 15 million dead pressing down on his shoulders. He had spent his entire career trying to prevent this moment. He had negotiated, compromised, and swallowed his pride more times than he could count. And it had all been for nothing. The Draxon Imperium has declared war on humanity, he said. His voice was steady, but his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. They have murdered 15 million of our people, including 3 million Serani refugees who were under our protection. They have stated that any human world is now a legitimate military target. He looked around the chamber at the faces of his fellow leaders. The Galactic Assembly has issued a statement expressing deep concern. They have called for calm and dialogue. They have done nothing else. Councilwoman Patricia Vance stood up slowly. Her face was like stone. Then we invoke Protocol Omega. All those in favor, enter your authorization codes now. One by one, every member of the council pressed their codes into their terminals. The vote was unanimous. There was no debate, no discussion, no hesitation. 300 years of patience had come to an end. Marcus took a deep breath. Let the record show that on this day, the Terran Confederacy has exhausted all diplomatic options. We did not want this war. We spent 3 centuries proving that we did not want this war. But some lessons can only be taught in blood. He turned to the military liaison, who stood waiting at the edge of the chamber. Admiral Samuel Grant had traded his diplomatic uniform for battle armor. His tired eyes were now sharp and focused. Admiral Grant, you may proceed with Protocol Omega. Samuel saluted crisply. Yes, sir. With your permission, I will activate the Arsenal worlds and bring the Omega fleet online. Permission granted. And Samuel, sir? Marcus looked at him with something ancient and terrible in his eyes. Make them pay for what they did. Make them understand what they have awakened. And make sure that no one in this galaxy ever forgets. Samuel nodded once. Then he turned and walked out of the chamber to begin the end of the world as the galaxy knew it. The Arsenal worlds were humanity's greatest secret. For 300 years, while the galaxy watched humans smile and bow and accept every insult, something else had been happening in the darkness between the stars. On the frozen moon of Europa, massive shipyards that had been disguised as scientific research stations began to open their doors. Ships emerged from hidden hangars, ships that made the Draxon fleet look like toys. They were sleek and deadly, built for one purpose only: war in the asteroid belt. Weapons platforms that no sensor had ever detected powered up their systems. Each platform carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. There were thousands of them, hidden among the rocks and ice. Waiting for this moment, on 100 secret worlds scattered across the galaxy, soldiers received their orders. These were not ordinary soldiers. They had trained since childhood for a war that their parents and grandparents had hoped would never come. They knew every weakness of every species in the galaxy. They knew how to fight, how to kill, and how to win. The Omega fleet assembled in the darkness beyond the edge of human space. Over 10,000 warships gathered there, more military power than the entire Galactic Assembly had ever seen. At their center was the dreadnought Hammer of Terra, a ship so large that it had its own gravity. Its weapons could crack planets open like eggs. Admiral Samuel Grant stood on the bridge of the Hammer of Terra, watching the fleet take formation around him. Commander Lisa Huang was at his side, her eyes wide with awe at the sight before them. "I never thought I would see this," she whispered. "I knew about it, but I never believed. ... No one believed," Samuel said quietly. "That was the point. For 300 years, we made the galaxy think we were weak. We let them insult us, cheat us, and look down on us. We did it because we hoped that if we showed them we meant no harm, they would leave us in peace." He turned to face her. "We were wrong. Peace cannot be bought with weakness. It can only be earned with strength. Today, the galaxy learns that truth." He raised his voice so that every officer on the bridge could hear him. "Send a message to every human ship, every human colony, every human being in this galaxy. 2 words, never again." The message went out at the speed of light and faster. It reached colony worlds and space stations, ships and outposts, everywhere that humans lived and worked and dreamed. And everywhere it reached, people stopped what they were doing and listened. Never again. It was a promise and a warning. A vow and a declaration of war. It meant that humanity would never again stand by while its people were murdered. It meant that the mask was coming off, and the galaxy would finally see what had been hiding underneath. On New Providence, Fleet Commander Krathver was celebrating his victory when his tactical officer began to scream. The sensor readings made no sense. Ships were appearing at the edge of the system, hundreds of them, thousands of them, more ships than should exist. Krathver stared at his view screen and felt something he had never felt before in his life. Fear. The human fleet filled the void like a swarm of angry hornets. And at their center, blocking out the stars themselves, was a ship larger than anything Krathver had ever imagined. Its hull bristled with weapons. Its engines glowed with barely contained power. It was death given form. "This is Admiral Samuel Grant of the Terran Confederacy," a voice announced over every frequency. "You have committed genocide against our people. You believed us weak. You believed us broken. You believed us incapable of fighting back." Human ships began to move, surrounding the Draxan fleet with perfect precision. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, nowhere to go but forward into the guns of an enemy they had fatally underestimated. You were wrong, and now you will pay the price. First shots of the final war lit up the darkness of space. The battle for New Providence lasted exactly 17 minutes. Fleet Commander Krathver had commanded the Draxan military for 30 years. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had crushed rebellions and destroyed rival fleets. He had never known defeat. Now he watched his entire fleet die around him. The human ships moved with terrible precision, like wolves hunting sheep. Their weapons were nothing like anything Krathver had ever seen. Energy beams cut through Draxan armor as if it were paper. Missiles that could think and hunt found their targets with perfect accuracy. Electronic warfare systems turned Draxan computers against themselves. Krathver tried to rally his forces. He screamed orders into his communication system, demanding counterattacks and flanking maneuvers. But his captains could not respond. Their ships were already burning. "All ships, retreat." Krathver finally ordered, "Jump to faster than light. Get out of this system." But it was too late. The human fleet had surrounded them completely. Every escape route was blocked. Every ship that tried to flee was destroyed before it could engage its engines. On the bridge of the Hammer of Terra, Admiral Samuel Grant watched the destruction without expression. Beside him, Commander Lisa Huang was tracking the progress of the battle on her console. "Sir Draxan losses are at 70%, she reported. "They are attempting to surrender." "No," Samuel said quietly. Lisa looked at him with surprise. "Sir? 15 million people," Lisa, men, women, and children. They did not accept surrender. They did not offer mercy. They slaughtered innocents to prove that they were strong. His voice was cold as the void outside. Today, they learn what strength really means. The battle continued until there were no Draxan ships left. Not a single escape pod was allowed to flee. Not a single distress call made it past the human jamming systems. 217 ships simply ceased to exist. When it was over, the human fleet moved into orbit around New Providence. Search and rescue teams descended to the surface to look for survivors. They found thousands hiding in bunkers and basements, terrified but alive. Among them was a young woman named Emma Cole, who had hidden in the underground shelters beneath the university when the bombing began. When Captain Nathan Cole received the message that his daughter was alive, he fell to his knees on the bridge of his ship and wept. Around him, his crew pretended not to notice. They all had loved ones on that world. They all understood, but there was no time for celebration. The war had only begun. Over the following weeks, the Terran fleet swept through Draxan space like a storm of fire. World after world fell before them. The Draxan had built their empire on fear and violence, and now they learned what it felt like to face an enemy who was better at both. The Draxan homeworld. A massive planet called Drax Prime had been the center of their civilization for 10,000 years. It was defended by the largest fleet in their history. 500 warships gathered to protect their sacred ground. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, the Draxan fleet was debris. Human soldiers were marching through the streets of their capital city. Admiral Samuel Grant stood on a balcony overlooking the conquered city. The Draxan population watched from their windows with terror in their eyes. They had been taught all their lives that they were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Now they understood how wrong they had been. "Sir, we are receiving transmissions from the Vethkai Collective," Lisa reported. "They are demanding that we halt our advance and release all Draxan prisoners." Samuel did not turn around. The Vethkai supplied weapons to the Draxan. They knew about the attack on New Providence before it happened. They did nothing to stop it. What should I tell them? Tell them that if they want to discuss terms, they can send their fleet to meet us. We will be waiting. The Vethkai were proud creatures. They considered themselves the masters of trade and diplomacy. They believed that their wealth and connections made them untouchable. They sent a fleet of 300 ships to demonstrate their power and demand negotiations. The human fleet destroyed them in less than an hour. After that, species across the galaxy began to understand the new reality. The humans they had mocked and dismissed for 3 centuries were not peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they chose to be. And now, they had chosen differently. The Thornax Syndicate, which had helped the Draxan plan their attack, surrendered without a fight. The Kregan Empire, which had raided human colonies for decades and paid fines rather than face consequences, suddenly discovered that fines were no longer an option. The Malari Federation, which had voted against every human proposal in the Assembly for 200 years, sent desperate apologies and offers of alliance. Secretary General Marcus Webb addressed the galaxy from the steps of the conquered Draxan Palace. His image was broadcast to every inhabited world, every space station, every ship with a receiver. For 300 years, humanity asked nothing of the galaxy except to be left in peace. We traded fairly. We mediated disputes. We welcomed refugees and helped those in need. We believed that if we showed good faith would be returned to us. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was heavy with sorrow. We were naive. The galaxy saw our kindness as weakness, our patience as cowardice, our desire for peace as proof that we could not fight. And when the Draxan murdered 15 million of our people, the galaxy did nothing. His expression hardened. So now we are doing something. The Draxan Imperium no longer exists. Their allies have been punished. Their supporters have been warned. In the Galactic Assemble, Y has been shown exactly how much its words are worth. He looked directly into the camera, and every being watching felt as if he was speaking directly to them. Let this be a lesson to everyone. Humanity did not want this war. We did everything in our power to avoid it, but we will not be victims. We will not watch our people die while the galaxy offers nothing but thoughts and prayers. If you attack us, we will destroy you. If you threaten us, we will end you. If you harm a single human being, you will face the full weight of everything we have kept hidden for 3 centuries. He straightened his back and lifted his chin. The mask is off. This is what humanity looks like when we stop pretending. Remember it well. Broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, trillions of beings sat in stunned silence. The universe they had known was gone. A new era had begun, and at its center stood humanity, no longer hiding, no longer pretending, no longer merciful. The final war had only just begun. 1 year after the massacre of New Providence, the galaxy had been transformed beyond recognition. The Draxan Imperium was gone. Its homeworld was occupied by human forces. Its military had been completely destroyed. Its surviving population, once proud warriors who believed they were destined to rule the stars, now lived under human governors who taught them a new lesson: strength without wisdom leads only to ruin. The Vethkai Collective had surrendered unconditionally after their fleet was destroyed. Their trade networks, which had once controlled half the galaxy's commerce, were now supervised by human regulators who ensured fair dealing for all species. The Vethkai had spent centuries cheating and manipulating other races. Now they learned what it meant to play by the rules. A dozen other species had fled to the far reaches of the galaxy, terrified of the monsters they had awakened. They had spent centuries mocking humans as weak and cowardly. Now they ran from human ships the way prey runs from predators, but not everyone had been enemies. The Serani, those gentle, crystalline beings who had suffered so much at the hands of the Draxan, found themselves under human protection. Their homeworld, lost 50 years ago, was returned to them. Human engineers helped them rebuild their cities. Human doctors treated their sick. Human soldiers stood guard on their borders, ensuring that no one would ever threaten them again. Ambassador Wells stood on the observation deck of Hegemony Station 1, the massive space station that now served as the capital of the Terran hegemony. She was a small woman with brown hair and quiet eyes, but she had negotiated the surrender of 3 different species in the past year. Appearances, she had learned, could be very deceiving. Her aide, a young man named Christopher Park, approached with a data tablet. He had been her assistant for 6 months, and he was still getting used to the weight of the work they did. Ma'am, the Serani delegation has arrived. They are requesting an audience to discuss the reconstruction projects on their colony worlds. Catherine smiled softly. The Serani had been humanity's friends even before the war. They had spoken up for humans in the assembly when no one else would. They had welcomed human refugees and shared their technology without asking for anything in return. They were one of the few species that the hegemony treated as true partners rather than subjects. Schedule them for tomorrow morning. I want to give them my full attention. She paused. How are the integration programs going on the former Draxan worlds? Christopher checked his tablet. Better than expected, actually. The younger generation is adapting well. They are learning human languages and customs. Many of them are even applying to study at human universities. In the older generation, more resistant. They still remember when their empire was powerful. It is hard for them to accept what they have become. Catherine nodded thoughtfully. It takes time to unlearn a lifetime of believing you are superior. Be patient with them. We do not want to be the kind of rulers they were. She turned back to the viewport, watching the endless stream of ships arriving and departing from the station. Freighters carried goods between worlds. Patrol vessels kept the peace. Diplomatic shuttles brought representatives from dozens of species who wanted to establish relations with the new power in the galaxy. Ma'am, may I ask you something? Christopher said hesitantly. Of course, do you ever regret it? The war, I mean. Everything we did? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. I regret that it was necessary, she finally said. I regret that 15 million people had to die before we acted. I regret that we spent 300 years hoping the galaxy would treat us fairly when we should have known better. She turned to face him. But do I regret what we did in response? No. The Draxan gave us no choice. They murdered civilians to prove they were strong. They would have done it again and again until there were no humans left. We stopped them. We stopped anyone else from making the same mistake. Billions of Draxan, millions of others, and that is a tragedy. But let me ask you something, Christopher. If we had done nothing, if we had filed our protests and accepted our defeat, how many more would have died? How many human colonies would the Draxan have attacked next? How many other species would have decided that humans were easy targets? She shook her head slowly. We did not start this war. We ended it. And now, for the first time in galactic history, there is peace. Real peace. Not the peace of the strong preying on the weak. The Serani are safe. The refugees are protected. The species that used to raid and steal and murder have learned that there are consequences for those actions. Christopher considered her words. I suppose you are right. It does not feel like victory. Victory never does. Not when the cost is so high. Catherine turned back to the viewport. My grandmother used to tell me stories about Earth before we reached the stars. She said that humans learned long ago that the price of peace is eternal vigilance. You cannot wish for peace and expect it to appear. You have to build it, protect it, fight for it if necessary. She placed her hand against the cold glass, looking out at the stars. For 300 years we tried to show the galaxy that we meant no harm. We wore a mask of peace and hoped others would see it as an invitation to friendship. Instead, they saw it as an invitation to attack. And now they see us as we truly are. Not monsters. Not conquerors. But survivors. Protectors of those who cannot protect themselves. And the last thing anyone who threatens our people will ever see. Down on the occupied Draxan homeworld, Admiral Samuel Grant walked through the streets of the rebuilt capital city. He was retired now, his war finally over. Beside him walked Captain Nathan Cole, also retired, and his daughter Emma, who had finished her medical training and was now working in a hospital that treated both human and Draxan patients. It is strange, Nathan said quietly. I spent my whole career hoping I would never have to fight. And when I finally did, I discovered that I was good at it. Really good at it. I do not know how to feel about that. Samuel nodded, understanding. War reveals things about us that we might prefer not to know. But the question is not whether you can fight. The question is whether you can stop fighting when the war is over. He looked at Emma, who was watching a group of Draxan children playing in a nearby park. They were laughing and chasing each other, no different from human children anywhere. Your daughter chose to heal. She could have become a soldier, could have spent her life seeking revenge for what happened on New Providence. Instead, she chose to help. Even here, even among the people who destroyed her world. Nathan smiled proudly. She is better than me. She is what we should all aspire to be. Strength without cruelty. Justice without vengeance. The ability to fight when necessary, but also the wisdom to know when to stop. They stood in silence, watching the children play. Above them, human ships patrolled the sky, ensuring that peace was maintained. Around them, Draxan citizens went about their daily lives, slowly learning that their conquerors were not the monsters their leaders had told them about. Secretary General Marcus Webb, now in his final year in office, gave one last address to the Terran hegemony. His words were broadcast across the galaxy. We did not want to rule. We did not seek power or glory. We wanted only to live in peace, to raise our children, to explore the stars without fear. The galaxy made that impossible. So we did what humans have always done when pushed too far. We pushed back. He paused, his old eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. Let our story be a lesson to future generations. Peace is precious, but it is not free. It must be defended. It must be earned. And sometimes, it must be won through terrible sacrifice. We pray that our children will never face the choice we faced. But if they do, we hope they will remember our promise. He straightened his back and spoke the words that had become the motto of the Terran hegemony. Never again. Billions of voices repeated those words like a prayer. Never again. The end.